Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 1 in Classic Cars and Coffee Celebrity Squares. It's in Perth, Western Australia. I've gathered for you the luminaries of the Perth motorcycle and car enthusiast group, and I'd like to introduce you to my four guests, I beg your pardon. And so I'm going to let them do that. Immediately to my left, that's that way on this screen, Ross Mace. Tell me about yourself, Ross.
Hey, well, I'm Ross. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a bit of fun.
Sure will. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I got into cars, I think probably like a lot of people, just growing up watching Top Gear as a kid. And then it just snowballs from there. And then when I was old enough to get my license, that's when the car hunting began.
It never ends.
It never ends, never.
And I understand you're a motor mechanic.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, finished my apprenticeship a year ago. And work on cars.
I specifically chose you because you represent a very vital and active demographic within the classic car movement in Perth. I deem you to be the young guys in this group anyway. And also you produce your own music, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We just
You play in a band?
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I'm going to move directly beneath me now. And this gentleman here is, he goes by the name Rex Havoc. Now, that couldn't really be someone's name, could it? And Rex, I understand you've got you work in the motorcycle industry in sort of two aspects of it.
Yeah, I do. So about 10 years ago, it's a long story, but 10 years ago, I started Himalayan Heroes and grew it up to a couple of hundred people a year would come on motorcycle adventures through India, Nepal, Mongolia, and places like that. And then COVID came along and stopped all of that. So I've been working at Motormax in Osborne Park, selling Royal Enfields and MV Augustas, Benellis, things like that. And we did a few more trips over to India last year and to Mongolia. And I'm off to India in a couple of weeks again very shortly.
So that looks like that whole market's coming back on stream.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Very strong.
Fantastic.
Mm.
You saved me a spot.
Absolutely. And
then diagonally across here is my old mate from primary school. Can you believe that? Used to live over the back fence in Como, Jeff Ash. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I think that's a sad indictment on your mathematical abilities, Simon, because you may have gone to primary school with my brothers, but certainly it wasn't me. So
please, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'll be nice. Basically, my first word was car, even before mum or dad. And I grew up in your typical 80s sort of suburban household. There was, V8 Holdens, V8 Fords, 2-litre Escorts, 260Zs. It was the perfect 80s car household. And then got into European stuff, 205 GTIs, Porsches, and then I started importing Skylines, Supras, that sort of stuff out of Japan in the late 90s. And that's pretty much me. I've got a shed full of Japanese things now. So yeah,
that's no exaggeration.
In a nutshell.
No exaggeration whatsoever. If anybody is lucky enough to get the Jeff Ash tour, it's fantastic. It really is something. And so in terms of classic cars and coffee, you're Mr. JDM.
Yeah. So I've been at most of them. I was at the first one and just followed on. I volunteered for a while, probably because of my Japanese knowledge. There's not a lot of people in the classic car scene that have certainly modern Japanese knowledge. There's a lot of guys that are into the Datsuns and that type of thing. But so I was fortunate enough to be involved for many years in that capacity.
Welcome to Classic Cars and Coffee, all of you. Now, down the bottom is the founder, Derek Graham, who I've known quite a while too. It's pretty tragic here. I've just gathered, four of my mates together. And so, Derek, please explain yourself and over to you.
Well, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Jeff, and he was one of our great door bitches. and greatly appreciate that. We've had 3 great door bitches, and one of them is Jeff, and one of them is Chris Clark, and one of them is Ross Dunn. And although that's a very derogatory name, it's a really tough job because they have to filter the cars coming in, and they inevitably get some of the pushback and grumble when the car isn't accepted into Classic Cars and Coffee. And so we try and make that clear, but it's terrific having the guys out there doing that tough job. And so, yeah, look, my first car experience is actually a go-kart experience, and my parents had an Arab stub with 16 Arab horses, and my 2 brothers were mad horse riders. I thought they seemed quite pleasant animals, but I didn't see the whole point of the whole thing. They just seemed to be very high maintenance and difficult, and they didn't do what you wanted them to do, you know. And I was all of 6 years of age, and Dad built a rear-engined go-kart with a sort of a chrome moly frame built around it, and solid wheels. And the minute I got into that car, that was it. I just discovered that my entire future was these fabulous, fun cars that drove very quickly and were engaging to drive. And so yeah, I've had lots of different cars over the years, English cars and German cars and motorcycles too. So, and Classic Cars and Coffee just came out of my passion for cars. And I'm glad it gives people joy, but be assured it gives me huge joy every single time I go there.
So, Derek, thank you very much. And thank you also for being the creator of something which I think's become a really important part of the Perth calendar. And, you know, you and I have spoken off the record about the importance, not just in the car world, but the charity aspect of this. And I'd like you to speak to that in a minute. But from what I recognize is there's a terrific contribution to mental health for people who this is their major event of the month. They sort of save up their social outings to come to this event, particularly as contributors, you know, people who have cars. And I just know it when I walk around and I see people. You can't go 5 meters without bumping into somebody you have to talk to because you haven't seen them for a month. That's a wonderful thing. Very valuable.
Yeah, it's you that first saw that, in fact. Our goal was always to create fun and joy. So it's no by accident. When people arrive in, there's a damn good chance that they would have been greeted with a smile and a hello and great to see you again, or I love your car, or you've done some great work, or in the case of a lot of the old V-dubs and rat rods, you know, couldn't you at least wash the damn thing? You know, as they come in the door, there's something to be able to say or comment or engage them, just because we want them to feel part of the family and welcome to that. And I think that sort of beginning, and all the guys know, everyone's briefed to do the same. And by the way, it's no effort because it's a joy to see the cars arriving, you know. And so that's the first part of it. And we think that sort of sets the scene. So then all these cars are parked everywhere. Everyone knows whether you've got $1 million Ferrari or a Morris Minor or a Maserati or whatever it happens to be, everyone knows that those cars sit alongside each other and they're not intentionally grouped. Yeah, we have little groups that are a small club that says we want a spot, but otherwise they're not intentionally grouped. The whole idea is that people are able to mingle with each other and chat with each other, rock up to buy a coffee, and as they're in the queue, they can talk to the guy next to them. Sooner or later, you know, we get to know each other and the conversations and friendships occur. It was you that spotted that was a real mental health advantage, and I think you're right now in hindsight.
I'd like to invite Rex in. What I've noticed, there's 2 things, and Jeff, there's 2 things that have happened more recently, which have given 2 new aspects to Classic Cars and Coffee. And one of them is the introduction of the bike section, which is really growing, because I saw a lot of really like pre-war stuff there last week. And the other thing is the JDM section has been given its own location within the university. So these things can grow and become really focused. Firstly, over to you, Rex, if you wouldn't mind. Did you go to the last meeting?
No, I didn't make the last one.
Well, there was a heap of really interesting bikes there. I would have put it somewhere. Well, you know, that's part of the group that's growing, and I think it's going to just grow like topsy. and it's got an elevated stage, a sort of a section which is it just bikes, and there was quite a lot. There was some really early stuff there, a whole sprinkling of Italian, Japanese stuff, sort of 70s, 80s, Yamis, Kawasaki's, all that sort of stuff that I just dribble all over. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
And so that I think is really set to boom as an area of classic cars and coffee. The other one that is already booming is Jeff and his JDM section. How many cars are you getting down that end?
Well, I would say it's the entirety of the business school car park that's full. Pretty much every event these days, and I mean, Derek would be able to speak to how many actual spots there is. I mean, whilst it was always nice to have, the cars I like in amongst all the European stuff and the American stuff, it's all to have our own little subset down there. So it's wonderful that it's a regular thing now. So yeah, really pleased that that's come to pass.
Now, Ross, I can't really invite you in because you're not running a section, but I do know that you're a big Volvo fan. And this, for me, brings home Derek's point about every car is welcome if it fits into somebody's got to love it and love it for the right reasons. And Derek can probably illustrate that better than anybody in a minute. But my point is that early Volvos, I've had a sprinkling of them, but right through 240s, all the rear-wheel drive stuff is absolutely cherished and loved. And it gives me a little warm glow when I walk down past the Saabs, and then I get right down the end on the left-hand side, and there's a row of 10 rear-wheel drive boxes. I love it.
Well, it's so good, isn't it?
It is. And I love the weirdest people get out of those cars. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, they certainly do.
So one of the things that, if you're watching this overseas or somewhere, what the venue is set, and Derek, I'd like you to hop in any minute, but the venue is set at the University of Western Australia, but it didn't start out like that. But I'll extol the virtues of the University of Western Australia car park, and it's got to be the intimacy of it. So there's, I think it's 2 roads that give us 6 bays deep or wide. And in that is a huge amount of really mature trees. So you've got an environment where you've got an intimacy, all the cars in parking bays, not just spread out everywhere. And you have tree canopy giving terrific shade in the summer months, and a place for people to find respite from the sun and chat and eat ice creams and coffee and all the rest of it. But it wasn't going to start off like that. Derek, what's the story of ending up at the University of Western Australia?
It was a bit of a meandering river to get there. So Classic Cars and Coffee first started with the Porsche Club of Western Australia. And at the time, I and my partner Grace were social directors. Often couples are social directors of clubs. And I said, well, let's do this thing called Cars and Coffee. We sure didn't invent Cars and Coffee. Cars and Coffee was invented in the mid 80s. Somewhere either in the UK or America. They're still arguing over where it started. But nonetheless, in the UK of America, there are 200 Cars and Coffees in the United States of America. Some of them don't meet very regularly. Not many of them are as large as what we do on a regular basis. And some of them are enormous, like with thousands of cars on a monthly basis.
What sort of numbers are we getting?
So I just had a look. So Jeff, you said in regards to car park number 9, which is where the business school is. So there are 261 bays there. And last time Classic Cars and Coffee met, it was lovely weather in the middle of towards the end of winter, beginning of spring. And that surprised us. And that met all of car park number 3, which is the one right next to the UWA library. And so that is 335 car bays. Car park number 4, which is the whole inner length that goes past the tavern up towards car park 9. And car park number 4 is 157 bays. Car park number 6 is 58 bays. And then car park number 9 is 261. So for those of you that are trying to do mental arithmetic, that's 811 bays out of all of those. We tend to get about half a dozen student cars there, which are left overnight because they couldn't possibly drive it home. And we get a few UWA cars. Probably you could count 8 or 10 maximum. So that takes it down to 800. And then you can take about 14 or 15 of them away because the coffee vans are sitting over the top of them and things like that. So you're basically talking about 790 cars is the capacity that we can take. And last event, it was at capacity. So when we did the first event, it was in a very, very cold, wet car park at City Beach next to the ocean. It was on a May day, and the wind was coming in at about like 20 knots. And I had put this out to the Porsche Club, come along and we'll create this thing called, Cars and Coffee just for the club. And I said, but I know you guys have got some cheeky cars in the garage that aren't Porsches. And so bring them instead. And so we had about 35 RSVPs and 67 cars turned up. And I'm going, hang on. And this is amazing. And there were E-Type Jags, Testarossas, Morgans, Lotuses, all these other things that these tragic diehards, like all of us on this screen, and probably a few of the listeners, can relate to the fact that these are the gems that they've kept in their garage and they don't often take them out and show them. And there they were. Anyway, there were no coffee vans. We all went to the local cafes and dragged these cups back and stood around and shivered. And everybody was there for 2 hours. And I thought, oh, this was just so much fun. Let's do it again. And I called my friend and colleague, Paul Blank, who was co-founded Classic Cars and Coffee with me way back then in late 2016, early 2017. And I said to Paul, let's do this thing called Cars and Coffee, but let's do Classic Cars and Coffee so that essentially we can, filter out the volume cars that we just simply can't cope with. Because I've watched Cars and Coffee, and what tends to happen is you get an enormous number of Holdens and Fords, and there's your gig. And that means that a lot of the other guys just turn up a few times and go home and they never go back. So we set this somewhat difficult set of criteria and said, look, it's not a Holden and Ford gig. Anything pre-1980 is enormously welcome. Post-1980, then it's got to be European, classic, super exotic, or a specialist sort of club car. And off we went. The first event was in City Beach with 150 cars that turned up. It was the first time it was called Classic Cars and Coffee. And we meandered our way through to UWA by going to the city of Perth. And because we said to the city of Cambridge, who were looking after us in that car park, we love where we're at. Thank you very much. Can we rent it every week, every month, et cetera, right through it? And they said for $80, which was very generous of them. And they said not for summer because it's right next to the beach. And it was obvious that it was not for summer. So we tried in the city of Perth, and they said, certainly you could, but it will cost you $20,000 per event. And so we said to them that they weren't very competitive and that the city of Cambridge could do it for $80. So at any rate, all of my sarcastic returns didn't seem to embellish the situation. Things just got worse and they said no. And then we found UWA. And UWA is just wonderful because they actually have an edict. They have a set of regs that says, reach out and let the public use our facilities on the weekends in a manner that is beneficial to the public and sort of something that puts UWA in a good light. Well, wow, it turned out that we met that. So they gave us a 3-month trial, and we were on our best behavior. And now we're actually defined as a UWA partner. So yeah, there we go.
Who do we raise money for? Where does the collection go?
So by about the 3rd or 4th meeting, we decided to connect a charity to it, and thought a lot about this. And we considered the demographics of our audience, which at that stage was particularly skewed to men in their sort of late 40s, 50s. Now it's changed now. It's got much younger, which is really wonderful. And a lot more women, of course, and of course the families and the dogs and all the rest of it. At any rate, yada, yada. So when we looked at it to begin with, this looked like a logical charity, which was the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia. And I had a little bit of, a pretty solid connection to that because I lost my brother Stuart to prostate cancer, and he was a very good fellow, and he would have loved this event. He always had XJS convertibles and other very silly cars. He also had a Jensen Interceptor with a 7.2 litre V8 in it, all these really silly English cars with bad electrical systems. And so Stewie would have loved this event. So we went with Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia, and those guys are fabulous. Yeah, they're a great partner.
Thank you, Derek. Rex, can I call you in? Is there anything in the motorcycle world, particularly in Perth, that is, I mean, we have the runs which get advertised on Facebook, and I've been on several, including a couple of yours. The last one was a single cylinder run, which I just loved.
Yep.
And those bloody Royal Enfields are too noisy, by the way. Jeez, I couldn't hear my own motorbike over the noise of Wayne Cole's his single cylinder. Oh, what a noisy beast that is. Anywho, is there anything? Is the equivalent exist in the two-wheeled world?
Probably the most the event that is probably the most similar is Two Wheels One Love, which is run by Rogue Motorcycles on the third Sunday of every month, apart from the 3 months in winter. So that starts about 7:30, finishes about 10, and it's every type of bike. So everything from Harleys to adventure bikes to sports bikes, but obviously a lot of classics and custom bikes are there.
Yeah, I've taken 3 of my bikes to that, and it's also good. I really see the bike section growing because somebody can go to one event on a Sunday. You've got 2 hours to cover the ground, but for me that's impossible because I spend 2 hours. I walk 5 meters and chat. Yeah. But the point I'm making is that you're going to have a whole, as this grows, a lot of bikes, a lot of European stuff, and a whole mess of Japanese stuff too, all in this sort of condensed formula, all in one spot. It really augurs well for a lot of bikes and Japanese cars getting there.
100%. But people, they want something to do. So if it's the first Sunday of the month, then people will be down there.
Yeah. One of the things that I like best is that it's done and dusted by 10.
Yeah.
Depending on the time of the year it is. But boy, that also makes it appealing to families. You know, your kids aren't going to be stuck at some car event from sunrise to sunset, you know, and chained to a deck chair under a tree with a bowl of water.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Well, the old days of motorcycle shows from all day, and then the trophies get awarded at 3 o'clock. No one's got 6-7 hours to hang around anymore.
Yeah. So I'm going to run around the group again and talk to people about what's in the driveway and garage. What are they working on? What are their interests? So I'm going to cut across to Ross, if you wouldn't mind, Ross. What lights your fire, mate?
Well, so I've got an 88 Volvo 240. And
beautiful looking car they are.
Yeah, lovely to drive.
I'm a fan, big fan.
Not particularly fast, but it's not always at that speed, is it?
Well, the point is you need to be seen when you're driving a brick like that, and this allows that for the public. You're doing a public service, really.
That's right. So the Volvo and a 77 Leyland Mini.
Okay, that's interesting. So what have you? I've never seen that car, and I've seen your Volvo, of course. Tell me about that.
Well, it's not actually finished. It's an ongoing restoration that's been probably the last 4 years. I've driven it twice on the road. Just got to finish off the last couple of bits, fine tune the carb, and then hopefully it'll be one of the coming up meets.
Oh, that sounds great. Was it a bare metal type restoration?
Yeah, back to bare metal, and yeah.
Is the color a secret, or is that available to us?
So originally it was a creamy sort of color. I ended up going with tartan red with a black roof.
Oh, I like it. You love a black roof. I know that.
Certainly do.
Go on, confess with the Volvo. Come on.
Yeah, it's got a vinyl wrapped roof.
What color is it?
It's black.
Oh, okay. Oh, I get this.
I recently bought my first motorcycle as well.
Oh, what did you buy?
Nice.
Yeah, things are improving, Ross.
Yep, I bought a Suzuki GN 250.
Oh, that's a nice bike.
And someone along the way has done a cafe racer sort of conversion, and it's nothing crazy, but it's fun.
Oh, they're a sweet bike.
Yeah, it's nice.
Very nice. Oh, well, congratulations. Things are looking good.
Yeah, that's enough for now. Certainly.
That's it. Jeff, I know this is a very dangerous question to ask you, because when I say what's in the shed, it's like, whoo, get a seat, sit down, ladies and gentlemen, make a cup of tea. Jeff's going to tell you what's in the shed.
Yes.
Oh,
What is in the shed? No, I've just the last couple of months I got a current model GR86, which is the new Toyota sports car. So they've got the 2.4 up from the 2 liter. And it's one of the few naturally aspirated cars that I've had that's almost fast enough straight out of the box. I was intending to turbo it straight up.
Yeah.
But it's like we put it on the dyno and it made nearly 200 horse at the wheels. So I mean that's
impressive.
It's respectable power. Yeah, so just put a shorter rear end in it and some big wheels and lowered it, and just normal things. But
of course you did.
Yeah, it's a hoot. It is. Well, yeah, I mean it's got to be low on some Japanese wheels, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
This is the Boxer Subaru engine.
Yeah. So it's the Subaru engine. So they've brought it out to 2.4. But yeah, that turbo kit's still calling to me, and they're only turbo kit's 7.5, and I don't know. That's 100 cheap kilowatts in my calculations. So. Yeah, I love it to bits. It's a great thing.
You had a Yaris GR. Have you still got that?
No, it bored me to tears actually. It was incredibly fast and incredibly capable, and I was sure I was going to lose my license in it. So yeah, I was just bored by it. So I'd much rather go slower and more sideways. Because again, people need to see you doing stuff. So, yeah, it was lovely. But yeah, it had to go. It was not my kind of thing.
I understand. Ponder on this question, everybody, and I'm going to cut to Rex next and ask him the same question. But hold this question: have any of you lost your license? Think on that. Don't give me your answer. Rex, over to you about what's in your shed, because I've got an answer too for both of these.
Yeah. I like two strokes, but two strokes don't like me. So I've just sold my Kajiba Mito 125 and I had a Royal Enfield Classic 500, and I had a good offer on that, so I sold that as well. So I'm left with my 2002 Kawasaki W650, which is unrecognizable to someone. It's so heavily customized.
That's a 4-stroke.
Yeah.
How many cylinders?
Parallel twin.
Okay. And you've turned that into a cafe racer?
Originally, but then it got knocked over, so I took that as an opportunity to change the handlebars into like a street tracker type thing.
It never stops.
It doesn't.
Never ever stops. So, Derek, we're going to pose the same question of you, but we'll keep it restricted to cars we have in Australia, okay?
Don't restrict any of these things. This is all fun and joy. But Jeff, what you said before was extraordinarily relevant, and I wonder whether it's just when we've got a big history of driving cars, this sort of mentality comes in. So my last Porsche that I own, not my partner's car, was a 997 twin turbo manual Gen 1, and I got it because to me, it was a classic buy where you look at the depreciation curve, you realize there's something special about the car. So it was the very last all mechanical car. So it didn't have sequential gearboxes or paddle gears or anything, but it just had ABS brakes, right? 500 horsepower on an overboost, 330 kilometers an hour top speed. So that's triple the speed limit. And the time I particularly liked on it is it went from 80 to 110 kilometers an hour in 1 second. It was just a nutty fast car, and it was beautiful. It was cobalt blue, and it's just a lovely thing. And I fell desperately in love with it and managed to acquire it, and drove it for about a year and a half, and just got bored with it. And that's an incredible thing to say about a manual Porsche. But it was so competent and so fast that you didn't get engaged in it till maybe you were doing 180 kilometers an hour. Heaven forbid that never happened, but it just didn't get engaging. And because it just kept on, you go into a corner and go, well, that was easy. And you think, well, I didn't have to set the corner up. I didn't have to do anything. It was just done for me, you know? And the car I had before that was a 911 SC, 208 horsepower, not 500, weighed 1,050 kilograms, and every corner I had to work for it. And I sold that car, and it's my car of great regret selling. And so there's my lesson. I agree with you, Jeff. Sometimes it's these visceral, and Ross, these visceral, engaging, comparatively slow cars that provide the great joy of driving. And certainly that was the case there.
I'm of the belief that most fun is had between 0 and 100 kilometers an hour. That's where the fun factor exists.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it needs to in Australia too. Let's be
not wrong. My garage, I beg your pardon, sorry. My garage is, I've got 6 motorcycles and a new Toyota Hi-Ace van, which I just adore. It's a fabulous thing. It was a workhorse. And yes, I know. And I've got a 940 Volvo station wagon, which is just pristine. It's just magnificent. And I've lowered that and put it on Bilsteins and American Spring, anti-sway bars, and all of this stuff. Anyway, so yeah, I'm truly an addict. But the motorcycles are where I have swung heavily in the direction of motorcycles, because motorcycles give you more of what I was looking for in Porsche ownership and Lotus ownership, and which is the intimacy of connection with the motor vehicle. So you get it with Porsches, you know, that is the front end going to grip, and you know what you've got to do with your accelerator pedal and all of that, and the setting up of corners, which Derek describes. So the rear wheel, the rear engine Porsche experience gives that to you. You cannot not be involved. And I've had a 968 front engine rear wheel drive Porsche as well, and that was just a joy. Did track days, and it was fabulous. And then a couple of Lotuses, but then I got my bike license, and I realized that bikes are where it's at if that's what you're chasing. If you're chasing that absolute connection with machine. And also for me, in the enthusiast experience is a lot about the internal combustion engine and power delivery. Now, different engines have different power delivery and give you this different sensation. Some big engines, you don't have to row so much, and smaller engines, you have to work the gearbox and encourage it. And it's a greater sense of involvement. Anyway, I love all of that stuff. That's why I'm an enthusiast. And that's why in the last couple of years, I've swung, not entirely, I'll be back into Porsches later. I'm totally convinced of this. But right now in my garage, I have a I think it's 1990, I think it is, RD350LC. RD stands for Race Developed. And it's a 350 two-stroke twin liquid-cooled motorcycle that has just revolutionized motorcycling and brought in the twin-stage licensing laws, which we have, because too many kids were killing themselves on them in the UK. It's a weapon. I love it. It sounds crazy. Red lines at 9.5. And I too, Rex, love two strokes. They're smelly, they're stinky, they're smoky, and I love everything about them. You know, the noise, the whole damn thing. Yeah. So I'm a bit of an addict, and I love taking off from the lights on my RD350. So that's a beautiful bike. Then I've got a 1968 Yamaha DT1. There's a bit of a Yamaha theme going on here. And in my street, there was an old guy, Roger Fitzharding, who passed away. He's a legend in the West Australian education system, used to be headmaster at Broome Primary School, etc. And a lot of people know this man. He lived in my street. I didn't even know he had a couple of bikes in the shed. He passed away. And in his will, he left me the DT1, the 1968 motorcycle. And we'll insert some photographs of that when I pull it out of the shed later. But we've restored that with my good mate Sean Moore, and we've got that to a beautiful motorcycle now. And I've taken it along to a couple of classic cars and coffee. I've got a thing called a GB500 TT, which is a Honda single-cylinder bike.
Awesome.
Honda tried making a cafe racer in the 1980s. I think mine's an 86.
Yeah.
And so it's a single-cylinder, same engine as the XL500, which won Paris-Dakar in its day. So it's this gorgeous factory standard cafe racer style motorbike, and I love that. That's just gorgeous. Makes a great noise.
What color is it, Simon?
It's indigo blue.
Yeah, with the
And
pinstripe.
I can just flip it into corners, and it's just such a beautiful bike. And then I've got a monster. Now, those of you that are motoring enthusiasts will have heard of the Beast of Turin, the 27-litre 1912 Fiat racing car, I think it is. Anyway, this is not that, but it's close. It's called another Yamaha. It's a thing called an MT-01, which is the MT range now is really, really popular. MT stands for Monster Torque. And this thing has 150 Newton meters of torque on a motorcycle. That stops the earth on its axis when I open her up. And it's 1.7 liters. Yamaha, for some crazy, mad reason, stuffed this 1.7 liter V-twin engine into their race frame, but their sports bike frame, which is called an R1. And they gave it the R1 suspension, and they gave it the R1 brakes. But it's got this big, fat, lazy, grunty, fabulous engine. So as you can see, out of those 4 motorcycles, which are my road registered bikes, all of them have incredibly different power delivery and a different sound. And each one gives me a lot of joy, but it's so vastly different. It's and that for me is part of the excitement of motorcycles. Then I've got a Deltec mini bike from 1972, and I picked up yesterday a Honda V4 twin cam 750, a bike I think 1984 vintage, and that's a VFF 750F, which is basically the granddaddy of super bikes. It's when Honda got serious about building a super bike, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I've got it. So, and have I ever lost my license?
Ended up buying it.
I ended up buying it. So,
excellent.
Yes, it's actually in the van right now because it's too heavy for me to get out by myself. Yes, and I've never lost my license, but I've had to do the double or nothing. And who was that prime minister that used to swear at people on aeroplanes before Julia Gillard?
Rudd.
Kevin Rudd.
Kevin Rudd.
He brought in that 50% depreciation scheme, and I went out and bought myself a John Cooper Works Mini, and 2 days later depreciated by 50%. Thank you, Kevin. And I pulled out onto West Coast Highway once and gave it a big welly in first and second, and lost 7 points within about 3 seconds of leaving the light. And so the policeman pulled me up, and he goes, and he could see all my paperwork because I was selling real estate then. He could see all my paperwork and the chaos in my car. And he goes, do a lot of work in your car, do you? And I go, yeah, I do. He said, well, you just lost 7 points, buddy. And I was very sad. So I doubled or nothing. I went the double or nothing. I sold the John Cooper Works Mini Clubman, and I bought a E320 Mercedes-Benz, slowed down, and I didn't mind it at all. How about you guys? Any licenses lost?
No, this is like AA, this is like,
it is.
My name's Derek Graham and I'm an alcoholic, So I'm not sure I want to confess this publicly, but the answer is yes, but I just won't tell you how many times, that's all. It's over many years. But I do want to answer one question that sort of I've been thinking about for a little while, and that is that, we're talking about these really visceral experiences of the motorbikes. I totally get that. I've got a motorbike too, and I get it, Simon. And one of the great things about the bikes is that you can buy 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 of them, and you can fit them in your garage, and you can turn them over fairly quickly, and you can work on them. And there's a real engagement level. You can't get 10 cars in your garage, unless you're Jeff. You can't get 10 cars in your garage easily. And that's part of the reason why these collecting of bikes has become really quite big. And not only is it quite big, but it's in parallel to the cars. The guys that have got classic cars have got classic bikes. They're not an
Mhm.
exclusive position. It's actually both the case. But Jeff, the other day you said to me about, that's right, we were talking about GT3s and sort of supercars, and that that you felt very you felt simpatico with people that had an old classic car that they'd restored, etc., versus someone that had bought their kind of new GT3 or whatever it happened to be. And I thought it was a really valid position. But I've actually bought that new GT3 many years ago, and the relationship I had with that car was truly fabulous. And the relationship was different to my old TR4 Triumph, which I restored from start to finish. But both relationships were really good. You know, the Porsche was just admiration and love, and I couldn't wait to get in the seat, and the thing rattled and made noises and everything it was meant to do, and your heart just roared, and I saw why. So although sometimes these collectors could be checkbook collectors, they're just fortunate enough to have enough money to buy one of these things straight out of Cheli's or Porsche Center, etc., and have it. I assure you they have a relationship with that car that's probably extremely passionate, although they're not going to turn a bolt on it.
It's the car enthusiast and the motorcycle enthusiast world is a broad church, and that's really what Classic Cars and Coffee represents. It's the bringing together of a minimum of 850 people on the first Sunday of the month, and then there's a whole bunch of people that have to park outside along the riverfront, and there's some interesting cars out there too. Derek, you and I have been to Goodwood and to the Festival of Speed, and the car park is kind of
it's awesome. The car park's
pretty
awesome.
close to the
that's right.
inside, you know.
Yeah,
it really is that good. In the JDM world, Jeff, there are some cars, you know, at first glance, one would think that it's kind of like you're going to get a whole bunch of Toyota Crowns and Corollas and just bread and butter stuff, but it's not like that at all. It's what stunned me most about the JDM section is the weird and wonderful, the stuff that I'd either forgotten about or didn't even know about. And we had a discussion a few weeks back about those two-door Datsun 1600s. And I just go, what? That is a gorgeous car. And the detail work and the badges and the trim, I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing that a lot of people don't really take into account is so many of the Japanese cars from the sort of late 60s and early 70s, they had European designers, and even up, you know, even some Isuzu stuff into the 80s,
divine.
like the old Isuzu and Holden Piazza, that was a Giugiaro car. So
yeah,
you know, they've certainly got the design pedigree. And just further to Derek's point, the thing that I really love about Classic Cars and Coffee is when I see something that, you know, like there was a Mitsubishi Colt a few months ago, and it was just, you know, it was beige, it had this brown velour interior, and it was one of the really early ones with the like the faired-in headlights. And I just thought, man, that's a really good shape, because, you know, I hadn't seen one for probably 15 years, but then seeing it in isolation and I guess forgetting that it was a Mitsubishi Colt, it was just such a beautiful car. And, you know, things like the Mitsubishi Cordia, you know, I mean, wow, just stuff like that. That's, you know, that's some of the weird and wonderful stuff that you're talking about. And that's why I love my little niche of the scene, because there's so much amazing stuff kicking around in garages in Perth.
Oh, there is. Recently, we've been getting those Toyota Centuries come along. They blow my mind.
They are a big, comfortable barge. I've had a couple, bought a couple in. Not my cup of tea, but the people that love them really love them.
Aren't they V12s?
Yeah. So they're a 5-litre V12. They just they got their famous J Series 2.5, and they put two of them together. So yeah, go Toyota. But yeah, they're a beautiful, beautiful engineered car.
I've spent probably 30 plus minutes just poring over the attention to detail on one of those. Blew my mind.
Yeah, they're a beautiful car. So I've actually got one on the next boat, not for myself, but yeah, I got one to order. So that's
There's any Yakuza in Perth?
Well, that's the common belief about Yakuza, is that they drive Centuries, but my experience in Japan is that they all drive Mercs and Bentleys, big S-Class, blacked out, either
Heavy
white
metal.
or black, 19-inch Lawrences, just as you would expect a gangster to drive. But yeah, they don't. You've got to be kind of a lower level henchman to drive a Century, unfortunately.
Now, Ross, in the Volvo world, there's a wagon which turns up quite regularly that's sort of jacked up. Everybody tends to lower their cars, and then it's got like jerry cans and spare wheels and things on the roof. And that kind of eccentricity and insanity, I really encourage.
Yeah,
You know the car I mean?
Yeah, and there's a few around. I think there's a 740 around that gets around that he's lifted, and I've seen him just drive straight over roundabouts, and it just.
I love that madness.
Yeah, great.
Look,
There's a couple that come in a Kingswood, and these guys would be like 2021 and boyfriend and girlfriend. The Kingswood is probably mid 70s station wagon, and it comes complete with the Venetian blinds in the back of it, and a crocheted back cover, a crocheted back little quilt that goes over the back seat. And there's a picnic hamper in the back of it. It looks like they've just stolen it out of their grandmother's yard, and it's their pride and joy. And that's another special thing.
I adore that sort of stuff. Also love to see the sprinkling of rear engine VWs that we've got, and like a big selection of Escorts. I love all that stuff, and there's more and more minis are getting down there as well. And I think we had and mini Mokes too. And then you get those two crazy guys that dress up in German military costume and
the
rock up.
wagon.
Yeah. And I just love those guys. Yet they might represent the Third Reich, but they talk with very plumb British accents, those two boys.
Wonderful British accent. Yep. And then a week later, they arrive in a Californian police car, complete with fake donuts on the front. And that's those guys. And they get dressed in Californian police gear. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So no, they're wonderful guys. They're just full of humor, and they arrive and everyone meets them and they laugh away. I mean, like the Blues Brothers car that we get turned up. That comes complete with the Blues Brothers music when it comes into the place. You can hear it coming down the road, dana, 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 as it comes down. All the guys sitting in the car, I got the hats and the glasses on.
Oh, yeah. Dedication. So this leads us also to what's coming up on the 29th of September. And it's a first for Perth, but Perth is going to host its very own Festival of Speed, just like Goodwood. Well, it's a one-day event for the first one, and it's associated to Classic Cars and Coffee. And it's going to be sort of, the day will be divided into two halves. One of it will be sort of a rolling road of interesting cars. So a chance for people with those sort of cars you just never see. And I understand we've got cars coming down from Asia, is getting shipped down specifically for the day. Now, that's only about 5 weeks away. And then the second half is where people get to have a chance to go on the track. So, Derek, can you enlighten us any more about that?
Well, I'd have to blame you for a lot of this, Simon. And that is that many, many years ago, he was an auctioneer at a charity auction, and UNICEF was it? 2 tickets to Goodwood were made available through a friend of ours. And this gentleman provided these 2 tickets to Goodwood, and there wasn't enough bids on it. Simon bought it and then called me and said, "Would you like to go to Goodwood?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, let's go." And Goodwood was an extraordinarily fantastic experience. The very best of cars, the very British of cars. sort of cars and people. The most famous racing car drivers paraded in front of you one at a time. And the important thing is that broadly, it was access all areas. So everyone could just go all around the place and see amazing cars, go into the pits, talk to the drivers, et cetera, et cetera. And this experience really made an impression on me, and I think Simon too. We got to meet amazing people when we were there, and we never forgot. And about a few months ago, the Western Australian Sport and Car Club approached Classic Cars and Coffee and said, we'd like to do a special event, and our focus is on bringing your crowd, so to speak, all of these special cars, up in a manner where the public can get involved with them, they can go on the track, et cetera, et cetera. And over a 4.5-hour coffee, we decided that it would be called Festival of Speed, and it will become ultimately our Festival of Speed. And so the first one, as Simon says, it's got a little bit of going around the track where people can get an opportunity to go out there, pre-organized, and go out on the track less than 130 kilometers an hour, I think it is. And they can have some fun on the track, and they don't have to have helmets and fire extinguishers, and they can take their girlfriend or partner out. So that's pretty cool. And then there's going to be some really interesting cars there, like Joe Ricardo is going to bring one of the Red Bull Formula Ones to the track and things like that. There'll be famous Formula 5000 cars there, all this sort of thing that you'd expect, but there'll also be magnificent old Cadillacs. And so this, we're trying to create, and just progressively, not this September, all of it, but part of it. But in due course, we'd like the event to go for 2 days for people to really get up close and personal with some of the best cars in Australia, and to have an event which emulates the Australian version of the Festival of Speed. And I hope
question, Derek, and I ask you this without notice, so forgive me. Can we get some, because bikes make a very good noise, don't they, Rex?
Oh,
and we could have some really stinky, noisy two-strokes in amongst the sort of demonstration parade, and they wouldn't take up hardly any room.
So there's nothing against that, because the Festival of Speed does have bikes in it, and normally Grand Prix bikes with famous racing car drivers, etc. But there's no reason why not. We've discussed it this time, and it's not happening this time just because of logistics and challenges. But next time, our intention is to bring classic bikes up there too, and have a section, so that the public can roam around throughout the pits and get up close and personal with the cars and the bikes, and the owners, to talk to the owners too. It's really important to speak to some of the race car drivers or some of the guys that have owned these cars for a long, long time, etc. And we're really part of that community. So a lot of the car collectors of Western Australia, we know them well. In fact, we have a little car luncheon that's it's a quiet affair that we nickname One More. And that's what it's called, the car luncheon for car collectors, called One More. And these guys all get together and they share their tragic addiction to cars. And it's a wonderful thing. And they are either the most tragic or they're the elders of our society in this area. And of course, when it comes time to things like Festival of Speed, it's an opportunity to say to them, now you've got a big car collection, or you've got a really nice small car, what happens to be, can you bring 2 or 3 cars? And these guys are enormously supportive of that. So, one community helps the next community, helps the next community, if you see what happens. Yeah.
So thank you, Derek. I'm looking forward to it immensely. Rex, the motorcycle tours that you do, they must be, and this is no pun, I'm apologizing in advance for this, but they must be full of havoc and misadventure. And you say you've done several hundred people now have done the tour with you.
Wow.
I just think that's, out of Perth, I think that's incredible. Well done to you. I'm probably a future customer. I've just did the French ride through the Pyrenees for 8 days at 2,500 kilometers. Great experience. And so I got a taste for it. I know what it's like. And in Perth, you run, you run a Facebook page called the Cafe Racer?
Well, it's Perth Cafe Racers.
Thank you.
Creatively named. Yeah, and that's that just started because when I moved to Perth, I didn't know anybody and I wanted to go for a ride. So I created that, and within a short period of time, there was 50 people, and then 100 people, and then 300 people, and then we try to keep it at 300 people for 2 or 3 years, but it was too hard. I was knocking back 10 people a day, so it's up around 4,000 or 5,000 people. So, and that's mainly people that are they're building a bike and they need help, so they'll ask a question, and then you get 10 people helping somebody, either just online or even they'll go around to their house and help them with their custom build. Yeah, it's great.
And how many rides do you organise, say, a year?
Well, we would comfortably do one a month on a Sunday, and then usually another one a month on a Friday night. So we don't do so many Sunday runs anymore. Everybody seems to be busy, but we do a fast Friday, which will go from Leederville along the river into Freo usually.
That was the first one I went on, and it was such a fast Friday, I lost you all.
Yeah.
By the time I turned the fuel on and kick-started my RD, you'd gone. I never saw you again.
Yeah, it's not for beginners, that one.
No.
And so any bikes welcome, Rex?
Oh, we've never turned anybody away, but generally I think people, they're not going to feel real comfortable when you see all these older custom bikes when they're on a brand new sports bike. They're not going to get out of second gear, and they're not going to enjoy themselves. So it's designed for customized bikes, generally speaking.
Yep. That's a wonderful success. And you're about to ask it, I think, in regards to Distinguished Gentleman's Drive.
Yes. So the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, was that commenced in Perth? Are we the instigators of that? I'll take all the glory,
Yeah. Well, certainly the genesis of the idea was in Perth. It just started when somebody in the Perth Cafe Racer group posted a photo of the guy out of Mad Men dressed in a suit on a motorcycle, and he said, "I wished I looked this cool when I was riding." So somebody else said, "Well, let's do a ride next week, and we'll all be in suits." And then from there, I created the ride, and then someone from Sydney, or Mark Harwer from Sydney, said, "Well, we'll do it in Sydney at the same time." And then we postponed it a couple of weeks, and we got everybody involved in Australia, and it sort of grew so quickly that we thought that we could get other people from around the world involved. So I put the call out to the UK, and they were all over it, and then the US were all over it. And I think in the first year we did it, there was like 60 countries involved.
Incredible.
That's
nuts.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That is just a community on steroids, Rex.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah.
I grew a magnificent mustache for that event, and rival Colonel Sanders' mustache. And COVID came, and my wife is a doctor, and she made me shave it off.
I really appreciate her work, you know that.
I really have my own testicles, yes. So we're going to wrap up in shortly, fellas. And firstly, it's been a great meet, and we'll edit this to suit. But I want to go around. Not all of you answered the question about losing your license for reasons.
Yeah.
And so we'll finish off with probably go across to Ross first. And then if there's anything you wanted to cover, this would be the chance in the rundown to cover it. Hey, so Ross, you were pretty shy when I asked who'd lost their license.
No, I'm well behaved on the road, Simon.
Yes, so am I.
No, I've never lost my license. Touch wood.
Congratulations, Jeff. Over to you,
There's
Jeff.
a time and a place for everything, Simon, and that's usually a racetrack. And no, I haven't lost my license. So
Well done. Rex?
I've lost my license so many times, I couldn't tell you how many. In fact, I'm on 11 points right now. I've got 1 point left for the next 2.5 years. I'll probably sneeze on the way to work tomorrow and lose my license with the way the stupid rules are.
you see,
So
you're on
pleased you
a
said
They're
that,
the same
Rex.
stupid rules for everyone else, Rex.
Yes.
Hey, can
Derek?
I just make a comment on that? Because they're the same stupid rules here in Perth, Western Australia. And so another story, but I had a car over in Europe for a long time. I had 28,500 kilometers. I used to write and driving around Europe in month-at-a-time bursts. Normally about 2,500 to 3,500 kilometers I would do, and they'd be in and out of major cities and different countries, etc. I wrote an article about how many fixed and moving multinovas I saw in 2,500 to 3,000 kilometers. And it was approximately the same number I'd see if I looped Perth 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
We have far more multinovas and speed cameras than any city I visited in Europe. And there was a lot of countries I visited in Europe. And so, yes, it is how, Rex, that's the rules of our road. But don't think for a moment that every city in the world has as many multinovas as Perth and Victoria, et cetera, does. They just don't.
Yeah.
Well,
So please, you spoke up, Rex.
Don't get me started.
Anything you'd like to cover before we head towards the exit and the sign-off?
I'd like to do one thing, and that is that acknowledge Luke and his team at Japanese Car Spotting, because those guys run JDM, and the great thing about it is JDM is not a Japanese car meet; it is a Japanese car show. So they are there determining what is the appropriate car to display, so that the quality of JDM is constantly building, and there's really good stuff there. And that team, that Japanese car spotting team, they just do a great job of running Car Park 9. And so, just want to say thanks to them. Whenever I get down, which is about every second event, I get down there to spend some time there. The guys take me around, and despite my love of cars, they give me a Japanese car, specialist car 101 journey and say, see this car here, Derek? That's why it's so special. I love visiting that Car Park 9 and seeing what those guys have managed to sort of curate into that car park.
Now, Rex, do you think there's a chance we could have a Perth Cafe Races run that ends up at Classic Cars and Coffee on a Sunday morning?
While we've been doing this, I've already shared the Facebook thing to the group asking who's coming. So it's
awesome.
On.
Thank you.
Cool.
So anybody else want to say anything before we do the sign off? Thank you. So a big thank you to all of you. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Derek. But mostly, thank you for not mentioning that I stuffed up the previous recording. Because all of you been incredibly kind, very kind, not to rub my nose in it. And so for that, I appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. That's a wrap for our very first Classic Cars and Coffee Celebrity Squares in Perth, Western Australia. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Good on you, Simon.